Welcome on in, guys. Three bold takes. And as we wrap up conference championship weekend, it's time to discuss Heisman. Although a lot of the Heisman votes were cast before the championship weekend, conference championship weekend, it's just interesting to kind of talk about it after the fact because a lot of the Heisman contenders play in some big time games, which to me, I would wait for my Heisman vote until after championship weekend. But some people are different. Guys, click the link down below. Join our Capital One Bowl Mania. We're looking to get quite a few people in there. See if you can pick better than us. Also, subscribe if you're not already. Now, with that being said, what I want to do is I want to read off the top 5 in Heisman odds, and this is as of this morning. Obviously, these things change all the time, but this is as of this morning, and there's a clear-cut favorite. Jayden Daniels is a minus 1,400 odds to win the Heisman. Penix from Washington is plus 1,000. Oregon's Bo Nix is plus 1,200. And Jalen Milroe at plus 10,000 is fourth in Heisman odds. Fifth is Marvin Harrison Jr. at plus 15,000. So who is your guys' Heisman winner this year in 2023? Chase, we'll go with you first. I picked on Quinn first last video.
Yeah, this is super easy for me. I'm going to go Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. I like him because as adversity's gotten thrown at him this season, he has absolutely taken everything and thrown it right back. 13-0 record, Pac-12 championship, beat the same team twice that really had one of the better defenses I thought, and absolutely shredded them. If you watch the big moments. He has a lot of Heisman moments to end games, to solidify games. The Washington State game, the Oregon game really puts the nail in the coffin that a Heisman winner should do. And maybe one of y'all go with this other guy, but I'm going to kind of give my pit against this other one. You're going to be like, oh, Chase, but Jayden Daniels, he has all these stats. He has all these records. And I say good, but at the same point, stat padding against bad teams and losing the games that matter has to be penalized at some point. For Jayden Daniels, he lost 3 games this year to Florida State, Alabama, and at the moment, the last one,
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. The 3 biggest games of the whole season. And you lose all 3. And you had good stats in the games, but you still lost the games. And personally, and this feeling for me doesn't just start with Jayden Daniels. It started back in 2010 with RG3 when he won his with 3 losses. Johnny Manziel kind of gave an exception to him because Johnny Manziel was just an absurd athlete that season, had 2 or 3 losses as well. But giving the Heisman away, I believe when you give the Heisman, it is a guy, if you take him off that team, that they are significantly worse. Like they're a 2 to 3 win team at that point. Michael Penix, I believe Washington has a 500 season, right? They might win one game above 500. Jayden Daniels, as much as the stats are out there, I definitely think that they're a 5 or 6 win team. I think they can still compete. So going from 3 less games to half a season gone. That's why I want to go with Penix more than Daniels, because I just think Daniels didn't show up when it mattered like Penix did. Now, if Daniels comes out, he finishes the Alabama game, comes back, great victory. Ole Miss, great victory. Something of that nature. Florida State made a statement that first game, made it close. That's a whole lot different. But the games that mattered, he didn't really show up in. And the games that were just mediocre games, he put up these amazing numbers. And I think everybody's getting caught up in the video game like numbers. Quinn?
What I will say, let me start at the bottom of that list. I'm going to skip over Marvin Harrison because I don't really think he has much of a chance. So we'll go over to the next. We'll go through the quarterbacks. My issue with giving it to Jalen Milroe is he didn't really come on until late into the year. So statistically speaking, he's way out of this race for me. So Milroe's not my choice. When it comes to Bo Nix, you played 3 ranked games. You lost 2 of them to the same team that had another Heisman contending quarterback on it. You're out of the picture. I'm sorry. You got outdueled by another dude on that list. So let's get to the 2 that it's really between, which is Michael Penix and Jayden. when you look at Jayden Daniels, you can offer up RG3, you can offer up Johnny Manziel as examples as guys who lost multiple games in the year, weren't in the national title hunt, but won the Heisman. What I would offer in response that makes that a different scenario is if you look back on the Johnny Manziel Heisman year, sure, they didn't go to the national title, but you know what they did do? They went into the house of the team that won the national title, and he had multiple Heisman moments and beat Alabama on the road.
All right.
What did RG3 do? He played a high-level Oklahoma team who, if I'm not mistaken, won the Big 12 that year, but I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on it. Or no, they didn't. It would have been Oklahoma State in 2011. But Oklahoma was in the picture for winning the Big 12, and a big part of what kept them out of it was getting beaten by Baylor, where RG3 had a huge Heisman moment, completing an over 70-plus yard pass with almost no time left to win that game. Like, I can think of clear moments for both of those guys. When it comes to Jayden Daniels, you played 4 teams that are in the New Year's Six. You lost the Florida State game where, sure, you can point out that LSU's defense did him no favors, but they didn't really score in the second half of that game either. You can bring up the Alabama game where it's the same thing. Like, yeah, your defense didn't do you many favors, but you also didn't really score in the second half of that game. So he kind of, in those to me are the 2 biggest games on their schedule. And then you lost a shootout to Ole Miss and you won a shootout against Missouri. I don't think that's necessarily a Heisman level moment, winning a shootout against Missouri that they barely won, by the way. Missouri choked that game out, honestly. I struggle to think of the Heisman moment for Jayden Daniels for this season. Like, statistically great, but the moment's not really there. And I don't like this whole his defense let him down thing when he disappeared in the second half of their 2 biggest games of the year, which was Florida State and Alabama. As far as Michael Penix, who is my choice for the Heisman, for me, I just fall back on Bo Nix was a top-end Heisman contender all year, and you had Heisman moments out-dueling him not once, but twice. And I think there's something to that. I don't think Washington is a playoff team without it. So my Heisman choice is Penix.
Very interesting there for y'all to dog on Jayden Daniels like the way you did. For me, the Heisman is not a moment, right? Yeah, you can think of Heisman quote-unquote moments, and that's what the announcers like to say, oh, that was his Heisman moment. But the Heisman is a collection of a year-long statistical race. I mean, that's what it is, right? Who has the best numbers and has the biggest impact to a team? And Quinn, I'm actually going to ride Jayden Daniels and agree that he should win the Heisman. And you mentioned that you don't like how people talk about how the defense let him down. Quinn, they were god awful, dude.
They were, but
they were god awful to a sense of like, if Jayden Daniels was not on this team, they might be a 3-win football team to me. Honestly, Chase, you cannot tell me that.
I still see 5 or 6 wins, 5 or 6.
No, they're not winning 5 or 6.
I think it's different.
I think Washington's defense would have kept them in a lot more games than LSU would have. Oregon's defense would have kept them in a lot more games than LSU's would have without Jayden Daniels. I mean, do you guys understand? He has a 208 passer rating on the year, right? Now that is not team success. That's not a moment. That is a collection of a year-long how good were you as a quarterback. Let me finish, Quinn. Let me finish. I haven't finished.
Okay. Good.
208, which is by far the best in the I mean, it's not even close. The gap from him to Bo Nix, who's number 2, is bigger than the gap from Bo Nix to Michael Pratt that's 11th, right? So he has submitted himself throughout the year as being not 1, not 2, not 3, but like 7 times better than the next best quarterback when it comes to the passer rating, right? Also, he has had 500 yards in it 3 times this year. He's had over 500 combined yards. That is unheard of. Now, I get it when you have a close race and the stats are kind of close that you could pull in the whole, well, if he wasn't on the team would suck deal. But when his numbers are not, they are by far better on passing, running. I mean, he's the first, I believe, the first quarterback in FBS history to have 350 passing yards and 200 rushing yards in a game.
He was.
Unreal. So the dude is a freak of an athlete too. So when you say his moment, I would say you could point to any long run that he had against Ole Miss, any long run he had against Missouri, which, you know, are the 2 biggest wins for LSU, which Missouri's a top 10 win, right? Ole Miss is a top 11 win. So they
lost to Ole Miss.
Or they did lose to Ole Miss, excuse me. It was like 52-49, whatever it was. Extremely close. And he was the only reason why they were in that game to begin with. So I think he should win the Heisman simply because, to me, we've never seen somebody with these type of numbers and athleticism before, period. Any other year, give it to Penix. I totally agree. He deserves it over Bo Nix, but I just can't argue with the stats personally.
And that's fair. I mean, if you want to say this is like the Lamar Jackson year where he's just so much further ahead statistically than everyone else in the field that you should give it to him, that's fine. My thing is I point to in the 2 biggest games of the year for all the statistical greatness he had all season long, in the second half of Florida State and in the second half of Alabama, the 2 best defenses he played, he disappeared.
And you know, I'll point that out too. His completion percentage was off the charts most of the year, but leading up to Alabama game, he had 3 straight games of 70+ completion percentage, and then he dropped to 62. He in the Florida State game, he had 345 yards of offense through the air and another 70 on the ground. He threw 59% against Florida State. Like the big games. Yeah, the numbers are still up because he's throwing more, he's doing more, but at the same point, he's not. He's got these elite numbers because he's using it more, but at the same point, not putting out. He's not putting out the numbers that are quality of a Heisman winner. He's putting out amazing stats, but the completion percentage or whatever, against the bad teams, he looks amazing. But against the great teams, when you're supposed to show up, even if one of these, it's a little different. If Ole Miss, they beat Ole Miss, if they beat Alabama, whatever, and they come back and he has the numbers are there and he beats those teams, okay, this is a little different of a conversation. But, you know, Brady Cook helped him in the Missouri game. And they threw a pick 6 to solidify the game. If Missouri would have scored in that drive, it would have been 4-4 of losing the big games this season. But you know, that's why I just can't get behind that.
Saying that Brady Cook helped him, no, the defense. It's the defense. If they would have been anything besides traffic cones sitting on the field, they probably would have won that game. And you look at the Alabama game. Yes, he got hurt in that game. I think personally that game would have been a lot closer. If not, they could have won if he'd have stayed in, simply because he was having a day. He had 219 passing yards, same as Jalen Milroe, but he didn't play the full game like Milroe did. But he had 163 rushing yards in that game. Alabama could not stop this man. And if you want to say Alabama has one of the best defenses in the country, which, you know, I would argue they proved against Georgia that they are, and he had those numbers while not playing the full game, I don't know, man. It's crazy.